Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. I know if you're a huge Big Brother superfan like I am, you probably just heard the news that Big Brother 22 is going to be returning tomorrow on August 5th. I am so excited to finally see it come back. So in honor of the second All-Star season finally returning, I am going to be sharing my 22 most unpopular opinions about the franchise. If you agree with my opinions, please like this video, subscribe to my channel, and be sure to leave a comment and share your most unpopular opinions about the show. Without further ado, let's get started with the video. So, for my first unpopular opinion, I'm going to be taking a shot at one of the golden boys of CBS, Jeff Schroeder. I genuinely don't see why he is so likable. I mean, are we forgetting in season 11 he was best friends with the racist surfer guy that left in the first week? And he also made a lot of homophobic comments about Dumbledore from Harry Potter in season 13.
Hey, Shelly, my Care Bears, what do you think
Gay. She announced that he was gay like us last year.
He's
really gay? That the character was written to be gay.
Do you watch Care Bears?
Dumbledore.
Was written to be gay?
Yeah.
Who's Dumbledore? The big guy?
Yeah.
The wizard. The old wizard.
Why was he written to be gay?
That'd
I was
be
just wanted to have a
perverted.
gay character for kids to understand homosexuality, and that's what she did.
How was he meant to be gay?
Act gay. Well,
He
maybe
doesn't
never
have
had
any gay
anybody.
tendencies.
He wasn't within it. Well,
He's
maybe
like,
that's the whole point to teach you that. You
Hey
don't
Harry, let me feel your balls.
Why is it? Maybe that's just for people like you think that stereotypes around gay people.
But I need stereotypes around gay people. He's in a school with little kids. You don't want to make that guy gay.
Why?
What do you mean, why?
Gay men can't work with little kids?
I don't think it's the right thing to have a little kid's book and have the headmaster that you're locked away in a magical land be gay. I don't think that's the right kind of writing to do.
I don't see why not.
I could see your PC view of why
No, I'm not.
But I don't think
Why
it's
is
the
it
right thing to do.
PC?
Okay, listen, you know exactly what I'm saying, okay? Don't make it seem like you're doing the right thing by saying that it's not. You're gonna let a storybook of where they go away to fantasy camp, and it's all little kids living without their parents, and the guy is gay?
But everybody else, but just because he's gay doesn't mean there's anything wrong with him.
Get the fuck out of here. Don't start with that fucking shit.
I know, but what if you...
Don't tell me the right answer for fucking TV
I'm
when you
not.
don't think it's the right
Because
answer.
my little sister's gay, so I
I
have
don't
to
give
deal
a
with
fuck
gay
if your
people.
little
I know
sister's
that,
gay.
so for
Think
me...
about what it is.
I don't understand. I truly don't understand.
You truly don't understand?
Why he would be
Well,
bad.
then I don't understand either. You don't understand what I'm talking about?
I don't understand why he would be bad to be
You're
a
right.
headmaster.
You're right. I'm not going to talk about it then.
Can I miss something?
Does anybody watch the C.S. Lewis, the William Rich Wardrobe?
I like that. The new one or the first one?
All of both.
As you can see by that video, he was being super homophobic and also being really ignorant and just arrogant when Kalia was just trying to educate him on how to not say it. But I mean, not only is he super unlikable, but he was also a really bad strategic player. I mean, how do you have not one, but 2 seasons handed to you on a silver platter, and you still don't manage to win either season? Jeff is one of the most unlikable and overrated players ever, and I would personally pay CBS whatever is left in my bank account just so we won't have to see him or his wife Jordan ever again. Alright, speaking of Big Brother 13, my second unpopular opinion is that either Kalia or Portia should have won BB13. The reason I say either those two is because they were so close to winning, up until that stupid Pandora's twist that was concocted by production. I remember that week specifically because Jordan would have gone home that week. Kalia, Porsche, and Shelly all had agreed to vote her out, but production could not handle their fave losing, so they rigged it to bring back that stupid duo twist. And then the worst part about the duo twist was that Rachel had already won that straddling comp before. I remember it was the week where she straddled a thing of Brendan and she won the comp before. So it was unfair to add it again because she already had an advantage. She won it before, so she was going to win it again. I guarantee if that stupid twist never happened, we would have had a Kalia and Portia final 2 like we truly deserved. My third unpopular opinion is that Devon is actually a much better player than people give her credit for. She's very observant, intelligent, and intuitive. The only reason she didn't do well in season 17 was that Shelly wanted to listen to her boyfriend Clay instead of her own alliance member. And a similar thing happened in season 18. when Nicole cared more about the guys in the house than her own alliance member. I think Davon's big brother story is really unfortunate because I think she could be one of those people that can really soar under the right circumstances. If she returns for BB22, she could really be the dark horse of the season. She just needs to give up on the whole idea of a successful women's alliance because the women will never have her back the same way that she has theirs. I'm looking at you, Audrey, Shelly, Zakia, and Nicole. Okay, so for my fourth unpopular opinion, alright, you guys bear with me. This one is going to sound really crazy, but Meta World Peace had the potential to be one of the best Big Brother players of all time. Hear me out before you dislike the video, okay? But he came in the house as a 6'4" black man, and he somehow managed to convince the entire house that he wasn't a threat. I mean, his game is actually very identical to Dr. Will's game in All Stars. And he could have won the whole thing if he had just kept the charade going. Well, if it was a charade. The first thing that happened similar, him and Dr. Will both acted like they didn't care about anything in the house. And then the second thing is, him and Dr. Will both came in as one of the biggest threats, but they both managed to lower expectations by constantly throwing all the competition. I mean, I don't think Meta even tried in a single competition. No one, I mean not a single person, saw him as a threat, but I guarantee you that if he somehow managed to get to those final 2 chairs, he would have won in a landslide. Unfortunately for us, that wasn't a part of his strategy. He was just naturally that nonchalant and dumb. But could you imagine if that was a part of his strategy? That would have been so iconic. I think BB Twitter would have shut down if he had won that season.
Both James and Chuck, his friends, it's anyone's guess what he's about to do.
Be my Valentine. Maya, would you be my Valentine? Love you, baby. I vote Chuck.
Thank you, Meta.
Alright, so for my fifth unpopular opinion is that Nicole actually did deserve to beat Paul in season 18. I remember when BB18 finale happened, everyone was so shocked and upset that Paul lost that they started the Paul was robbed hashtag. And coincidentally, those of you guys who started the hashtag are the ones that made Grodner bring back Paul for the garbage fest that was BB19. But you know what? That's a whole nother conversation. But regardless of how I felt about Nicole or Paul, I think Nicole played a much better game than Paul in season 18. I truly do. She always had control of the votes every single week, and she was in an alliance with 90% of the house, but somehow it didn't come back to blow up in her face. People always say, oh, all she did was stay in bed for the second half of the game. And I mean, you're not wrong. She used the pre-jury period to gather up her numbers, and then in the second half of the game, she just chilled because she didn't have to work as hard anymore. And that's what you're supposed to do. I mean, you guys remember in the jury portion of the game, she had Corey, Victor, Paul, Paulie, James, Natalie, and Davon in her back pocket. Everyone liked her except for, Michelle, who was super bitter, and we all know that now. But that's a whole nother conversation. I honestly think people only rooted for Paul because he was supposedly the underdog. But if you objectively rewatch that season, Nicole was a much better player than Paul, and she deserved her win, rightfully so. So people need to stop discrediting her and saying, oh, Paul was robbed. No, he wasn't. He wasn't a horrible player, but he didn't deserve to beat Nicole. Sorry, not sorry. So, now for my sixth unpopular opinion. It's that Kevin should have won Big Brother 11. Okay, so I know it just sounds like I'm picking on Jeff and Jordan now, but I'm honestly not trying to. They seem like really, really sweet people outside of the house. I just think production rigged way too much for them in season 11 and season 13. That is why it's my opinion that Kevin should have won season 11. Not only was he super strategic, but he was also very sociable and had tons of support on his side. He savagely evicted Jeff, and weeks before that, he convinced Jeff to turn on one of his closest alliance member in Russell when he had, only 3 people and Jeff's side had at least 5, I think, or 6. That move was so iconic, and it solidified him, in my opinion, as one of my top 10 favorite players. I think his one mistake was evicting Michelle instead of Jordan, and I think it was one of the last 4 weeks of the house. I truly believe he had the votes to win over her. He actually could have almost had a unanimous vote if Chima hadn't been evicted, but that's a whole nother conversation for a different day. And I'm so glad to hear that he's coming back for season 22 of All Stars. I think he definitely belongs in the group of All Stars, and I'm so excited to see how he will play this round.
The votes are in, and we have a tie. It's now up to Kevin, the head of household, to cast the deciding vote. House guests, the votes are in, and we have a tie. 1 vote to evict Jordan, 1 vote to evict Jeff. Kevin, as current HOH, you must decide which of these two will be leaving the Big Brother house tonight. Just a reminder, when Kevin casts his vote, the evicted house guests will have just a few moments to say goodbye, gather their things, and walk out the front door. Kevin, please stand, face the 2 nominees, and cast your vote to evict.
Well, it's coming to the point of the game where I have to make decisions that further me in this game, and I'm sorry to have to do this. I'm sorry, Jordan, to have to do this, but I'm gonna have to vote to evict your friend, Jeff. Nice, desperate try. You're out of here.
Jeff, it is official. You are evicted from the Big Brother house.
No worries.
I had to stick to my word.
I know.
Oh, now that's how you clear a bitch. I don't know who that hoe is, but you can.
Alright. Let me stop picking on Jeff and Jordan seasons, and let me move on to one of the newer seasons with season 20. So, season 20 was one of my top 5 favorite seasons, but it was also one of the most frustrating seasons for me to watch because I was on the side of the Faute/Hive alliance. So now if you guys were like me and you were rooting for the Faute side, you were probably frustrated with that alliance just because they were so dumb and just had no idea what was going on. So this brings me to my 7th most unpopular opinion, which is that Haley is the real reason why the Hive was demolished so quickly in season 20. You know, a lot of people debate about it. They ask, why were the Faute alliance so bad? Everyone either says Caitlyn or Fessy or Swaggy or even Bailey. But if we're being honest, the real reason the Faute side never stood a chance against Level Flop is because Haley Brochure was not assertive enough. Haley was the glue that held that Faute alliance together because she was everyone's closest ally. Rockstar trusted her the most. Bailey was her best friend. Fessy and Scotty were both in love with her. Swaggy respected her a lot. And Caitlyn trusted her the most out of anyone in that side of the house. So because she was the glue that held that crumbling alliance together, anytime any of the Hive members had a stupid idea, they told Haley about it first. Before Caitlyn backdoored Swaggy, she told Haley about it. Before Fessy backdoored Scotty, he told Haley about it. Before Bailey told Rachel about her power app, she also told Haley about it. Even before Rockstar wanted to do the pots and pans thing with Brett, she told Haley about it as well. So do you all see the pattern? If Haley had held her foot down and told them all no when they suggested these idiotic ideas that ruined their game, Faute would not have been demolished by Level Flop as much as they did. Thus, we can end the long-held debate of who destroyed the Faute/Hive alliance. The true culprit is Haley, and not because she's a bad player, but simply because she wasn't assertive enough and she didn't hold true to her opinions enough. If she had risen to be the leader that we all knew she was capable of, Hive would have destroyed Level 6 because they honestly were comp beasts and they were just more entertaining players. So, yeah. Alright, so now my 8th most unpopular opinion will be coming from a season that I like to forget that it ever happened. Season 15. You guys remember this season with all the racists and the bigots and the homophobics. Yes, people even worse than Jeff. But yeah, so my number 8 most unpopular opinion is that Candace from season 15 was actually very underrated. Like, she was probably one of the smartest people in the house. She was really in tune with the house. She was very observant and just she was very similar to Devon, honestly. Like, she had a lot of potential, but she never got a true chance to play the game. I feel like if she was on a better season, she would have really soared. And I would love to see her come back for season 22, but I doubt she'll ever want to get the chance again. I mean, did you guys even remember she was the first person to call out the Boys Alliance, that trash-ass moving company from day one? She was the first one to notice that there was a Boys Alliance. She even called out the members. She said, I feel like there's a Boys Alliance, and it includes Howie and Spencer and And Jeremy, yeah, she called out all the right people. And she knew that they were all on an alliance before Amanda. But for some reason, Amanda got the credit on TV, which is a whole nother conversation, because I found out some tea that Amanda and one of the women from productions are best friends. But that's a whole nother conversation. But yeah, that's my 8th most unpopular opinion. Candace from BB15 was very underrated, and I would love to see her come back if she wants to try it again, because I truly think she'd make an amazing player if she's not stuck in a house full of racists.
Candyland, you're just not there with me. Duh.
Alright, so for my 9th most unpopular opinion, I already know I'm going to sound like a hypocrite because I just got done dragging this season, but honestly, BB15 had one of the best pre-juries ever. Like, if you take out all the bigotry and the homophobia and the racism, like, if you just look at strictly gameplay, it was an amazing season game-wise. Well, the pre-jury phase. There was a blindside every week for those first 5 weeks. When Jeremy went home, when Nick went home, like, that was the first modern season in which the viewers were actually surprised. But, you know, I don't know. I think after, was it Judd that left? After jury started, they all just started doing house votes, which got boring and annoying. And then the racism got even more out of hand because Amanda, the person we rooted for in the first few weeks, started showing her true colors. So it just turned into a shit show after that. But the pre-jury was actually amazing. Like, I was actually excited about this cast when it first premiered, because that was the first time since the modern seasons where we've actually had blindsides for 5 weeks straight in a row. If only they weren't such horrible people, I would put this as my top 5 seasons, but it has to go under my bottom 5 just because, you know, I'm a black woman and I can't condone racism. But it had an amazing pre-jury, and I'll stand by that. Alright, so for my 10th most unpopular opinion, it's going to be on BB16, which is, in my opinion, one of the worst seasons of Big Brother. So when we talk about worst seasons, everyone always brings up like BB9 or BB19, BB21, which I agree with all of those. But for some reason, no one ever brings up BB16, which I think is one of the worst. It was super boring. It was super predictable. I think everyone knew who was going to be the final 4 within the first 2 weeks of the game. Like, I'm not trying to sound arrogant, but I genuinely did know that it was going to be Derek, Cody, Frankie, Caleb, and then I knew it was going to be like a Jocasta or something, but turns out it was Victoria, so I wasn't that far off. But yeah, it's just the fact that it was so predicting and so boring makes it one of the worst for me. I like to be excited. I love to not be able to predict shit. So if I am making a list of my bottom 5 seasons of Big Brother, it's going to be BB9, BB19, BB21, BB15, and BB16. I don't know why people put it in their top 10 seasons. It's a horrible season to me, and it doesn't deserve the hype that it gets. It's really boring, and it's just a snooze fest. It also has like probably all the combinations of everything I hate in Big Brother seasons. It has production rigging things for house guests. It has a lack of diversity, a huge lack of diversity. It also has a very, very weak female cast. So those 3 things for me are what makes or breaks a season, and BB16 has all 3 of them. It's basically BB12, but it's like less likable house guests. I really, 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 really hated this season. I can't tell you a good thing about it. Not one. Well, maybe Jocasta's praying. That was pretty funny, but that's it. Alright, so speaking of the snooze fest that was BB16, I'm going to move on to my 11th most unpopular opinion, which is that Derek, the winner of season 16, was really, really, really overrated. I mean, if he played that same way in another season, like season 15 or season 17, season 18, or even one of the older seasons like seasons 5 or 6 or 4, he would not have made it to jury. And I say this like with all my chest. Like, I want him to come back for BB22 just so he's gone the first few weeks, because he's just, I don't know why the fan base has hyped him up as if he's like a Dan or a Dr. Will level player. He's really not. He's not a bad player. It's just he played with idiots. That's why I'd argue if he played with people that were a lot more intelligent, he wouldn't have done as well as he did. Well, he probably might have won, but he wouldn't have gotten all the way to the final 2 without being nominated, not even once. I mean, like, Stevie Wonder could have told you that Derek was controlling the season. So the fact that nobody else saw that Derek was controlling the season, it doesn't mean that he's necessarily this amazing player. It's just that everybody else was incredibly stupid. And are we forgetting he was an undercover cop? When you cast an undercover cop in a season with people that are like social media influencers or like stay-at-home wives, and I'm not trying to downgrade anyone, but I'm just saying, like, he was on another level compared to the other cast. Like, I don't think there was anyone that could have even like held a candle to him. If they had put people from season 8, maybe not 18, but season, one of the earlier seasons, like 6, if he had been put in season 6, he would not have crossed jury because people would have saw right through him because they were a lot more intelligent on that season. I truly think Derek got lucky, and he played in a time when CBS wanted a cop to win, because I think that was the time when they were going through an anti-military sentiment, an anti-cop sentiment. So they wanted a staple cop and police officer to win the season. So that's why Derek won. And once again, I'm not taking anything from his gameplay. He played an amazing game, but I would argue if he played on a season with people that were more intelligent than people in season 16, he wouldn't have done as well, and he wouldn't be counted as one of the all-time greats. I put him in my top maybe 7. I wouldn't necessarily say top 5, and I certainly wouldn't say top 3, because to me, beating idiots does not make you smart. It just makes you normal. So that's that. All right, so for number 12, let's just start it on a happier note. I'm going to talk about the best season of Big Brother, which is hands down season 10. So I thought this was a pretty popular opinion, but for some reason when I put it on Twitter, everyone was saying, no, BB6 or BB7, or, somebody actually said season 16, which, don't even get me started on that, which I just went on a whole rant about how horrible it is. But yeah, my favorite season is BB10. It literally had everything that you could ask for a good Big Brother season. It had amazing female characters. It had great diversity. It had amazing gameplay. It had no production really rigging. Well, except for that one time I think they rigged something for Dan where he had to go on a date with Michelle so he could get her jury vote. But that's the only time. That was literally, it's sad that only one rigging counts as like less rigging, but yeah, that's what we're at BB right now, because BB10 only had one production rigging, and then it also only had like a couple of twists, but pretty much it was just amazing gameplay. It was strategic, entertaining, just an amazing season all around. And like, I still remember all the cast till to this day. All the cast from Keisha, Libra, April, Dan, they're still some of my favorite players to ever play this game. I don't think a season will ever touch BB10. Well, I hope BB22 surpasses it, but for right now, BB10 is still my favorite all-time Big Brother season. Yeah, and you guys can't change my mind on that. Alright, so for number 13, this one is super controversial, but you know what, I'm gonna say it anyways. Chima had every right to throw the microphone in the pool. I think she was done so dirty by production. Like, the production should not have taken away her HOH. The coup d'etat, like, I understand why she was upset. I would have been upset as well, because it was rigged for Jeff in BB11. So I definitely agree with her being upset. Like, they should have, if they wanted to do a coup d'etat twist, they should have done it the same way that they did in season 7 with Mike Boogie. Remember, Mike Boogie actually had to answer questions for him to win the coup d'etat. But this one in season 11, they had a stupid America's vote, which for some reason Americans voted for Jeff, which didn't make sense, because like all the people I talked to, we all hated Jeff. So I don't know, maybe because it has such a high white woman fan base, that's why they all voted for Jeff. But I guarantee you, if season 11 had premiered like in 2020, Jeff would not have made it into the top 3 votes. If anything, he would have been the least favorite vote. Like he just was not, like, I already went into it in my first opinion, but Jeff was not a good person. Like, I don't understand why production rigged so much things for him. And this is what happens when you do a lot of rigging. And I feel like Chima should not have been taken out of the game because it really took a turn and it affected a lot of things. For example, the fact that Chima was not in jury, that basically gave Jordan a free jury vote. Like, you remember it was Natalie and Jordan in the final two, and I think Natalie lost by 1 jury vote because Chima was not in jury anymore, so they gave that vote to America. But if Chima was there, I don't think Chima would have voted for Jordan, but America voted for Jordan. If Chima was there, Chima would have voted for Natalie, and Natalie would have won season 11. But because they decided to remove Chima for something which I think she was pretty justified in doing, then it changed the entire course and the entire history of the show. So it's amazing what happens when production doesn't mind their own business. I'm looking at you, Grodner, and you casting. Stay out of the game. Mind your fucking business. So for my 14th most unpopular opinion, it's going to be on BB7, which was the last All-Star season. And honestly, BB7 was a very underwhelming season. Like, when we talk about good seasons, people put it on its like top 5 seasons. They usually say BB6 and BB7 were the best seasons, but I think it was, I mean, it wasn't a horrible season, but it just wasn't great. It wasn't good for an all-star season. Like, it wasn't strategic enough, and like it was just really predictable and really boring. I think it was just that it was only one mastermind in there, like Dr. Will. Like, I'd argue if Chilltown, or maybe if just Boogie hadn't been casted on season 7, I honestly think it would have been a much better season because people would have actually came out to play. But like, everyone we had on that season was just blah. Like, the season 6 people, they were good at competitions, but they were all just so brain dead. Like, Janelle didn't have a single brain in her head, which is a whole nother conversation. And James had a brain, but he just wasn't sociable enough. Like, it was really underwhelming for an all-star season. I remember watching it and I was like, oh, okay, this is it. Like, I wish it was better than it was. That's why I really hope the second all-star season surpasses it, because season 7 was just not that great. It was a mid-tier season, but it wasn't as good as people claim that it is. Okay, so number 15, all you Evil Dick fanboys might want to exit the page like right now, because he is one of my lower tier winners. I'd put him in my bottom 7 winners now. Yeah, he wasn't a good winner. I don't know why he gives his opinion like he's this god on Twitter, and he has this like god complex, like he's the best player ever. Like, no, you're on one of my bottom tier winners. Like, season 8 was rigged for you to win, because I remember that week, I think it was the first week of jury, Evil Dick should have left the house instead of Dustin. Dustin left the house because of that stupid America's Player twist that just ruined Eric Stein's game, which is another point. Eric Stein should have been the true winner of that season if production hadn't made that stupid America's Player twist. But yeah, I don't know why America would vote for Evil Dick over Dustin to stay. Evil Dick was just a horrible person. Like, the way he treated Jen and the way he just treated Jamaica and everybody else in the house. Like, I don't know. Big Brother just has some really horrible fan base, I guess, because they always vote for the horrible white man. But you know what? That's a whole nother conversation. Regardless, Evil Dick was not a great winner. Season 8 was rigged for him to win, and I will die on this hill. Sorry, not sorry. Alright, so for my 16th opinion, I'm going to be going to BB Canada. And if you guys have never watched BB Canada, you're missing out on a lot, because BB Canada is 10 times better than BBUS. But, that's a whole nother conversation. But my 16th most unpopular opinion is that Godfrey should have won in season 3 of BB Canada over Sarah. And here's why I say that. Like, I'm not trying to downgrade Sarah's game or anything. I think Sarah actually played a really good game. But I just think Godfrey's game was a lot more difficult to master. Like, I think if anybody else played that game, they would never get to the final 2. Godfrey's game was literally sleeping and cursing out people. Like, that was his game. He would go to sleep and then he'd wake up, be like, I'm coming after you. You guys don't come after me because I'm gonna come after this guy. Like, everyone thought he was basically the Josh. Well, no, I'm not gonna do him that dirty. He wasn't really the Josh. He was a lot smarter than Josh, but he wasn't really controlled by Paul like Josh. Like, he wasn't controlled by anyone. He did his own thing, but he was kind of like the dark horse of that season, if that makes sense. Like, I feel like Sarah was production's pet. Like, production would rig competitions for Sarah and Whitney all the time. So just by that, I think Godfrey had a much harder road to get to the final 2 than Sarah did. So just based off of that, I would have rather seen him win over Sarah. But I'm not upset about it. Like, I think Sarah's a great player. I just think Godfrey's game was like no other game that I've ever seen, and it will be difficult for anybody to ever like duplicate that game. Yeah, I think that was a once in a lifetime type of gameplay. Alright, so for my 17th most unpopular opinion, I'm going to be taking it back to old school Big Brother in season 4, which is Allison should have won over June. So yeah, the same thing I feel with the previous opinion. Like, I don't think June necessarily played a horrible game, and I wasn't pissed that June won. I just think Allison's game is a lot more difficult to master, and it's a lot more difficult to play. Like, all June did was bake all day. Like, she would bake and then she would talk shit about like all the castmates. But Allison was like actually running shit. Like, I think the reason she didn't win, now that I look back on it, it was a lot of misogyny and it was a lot of sexism, because she was basically playing all of the men in the house. Like, I'm not trying to like talk about her, but I think she had like 5 showmances on that season. Like, she was involved with a lot of guys. So I think that's why they didn't want to reward her at the end, because, you know, they were very behind. I honestly think if they played today, I think the jury would have seen that Allison's game was much more complex. June was basically a floater. Like, she would go to whoever was in power at the time. She had no loyalties. She would just bake for the person who was in power, and then they would keep her safe. She didn't really work, if I'm being honest. Well, if you call baking working, then I guess fine. But Allison was actually like she would, who was that one guy she slept with, but then she dissed him the next week and then went with his friend. Like, Allison was super hungry for it. And I think a lot, like, the reason she didn't win, like, I wouldn't say it's 100% misogyny, but she should have gotten more than 1 vote. Like, I feel like the jury was just so, like, yeah, the jury was bitter against her. They were like, oh, how dare she play that type of game, and because it was in a different time, she didn't win. But I think her game was much more complex than June, and I just prefer people that worked harder to get to the end. So that's why I think Godfrey should have won over Sarah, and that's why I think Allison should have won over June, because her game was more difficult than June's. So she played the flirt card before it was a thing. So she was really ahead of her time, even though she kind of contradicted herself in All Stars when she was slut-shaming Janelle, but that's a whole nother conversation. Regardless, she deserved to win over June. Sorry, June. I still think June is a good player. I just think I preferred Allison's game. I think it was harder to master, and it will never ever be duplicated because we shame women too much. Alright, so for my 18th unpopular opinion, you guys are gonna get mad, but it has to be said. I don't want to see Janelle or Kesar play Big Brother for a 4th time. I feel like after you've played it the first time, you don't win, okay, you can come back. Second time you don't win, okay, I'll give you one more chance. Third time you don't win, and then 4th time, like, no. Like, you need to stay at home at that point. I'm sorry, I know how that sounds. That sounds horrible. Like, Janelle, I feel like the only time she had a chance of winning was either season 6 or season 7. She blew both of her chances. Like, it's done. There's no need for her to come back. Kesar, it's like, I technically count him as 3 times because he played twice in BB6. And even when he played twice in BB6, he still didn't make it to jury. Like, I'm sorry, he seems like a sweet guy, but he's not a good Big Brother player. I feel like if they bring Janelle and Kaysar back, they're gonna turn into like a Boston Rob from Redemption Island and Survivor, where they rig it for him. You remember in Boston Rob, they brought him back for the 4th time because Jeff was obsessed with Boston Rob and he wanted him to win a season. I feel like if Janelle or Kaysar came back, that's what it's gonna be like, and I don't want that to happen. I don't want their legacies to be ruined. So I guess the final rule I'll say is, if you've played Big Brother more than twice and you still haven't won, you're just a bad player and you should probably stay at home. Sorry, not sorry. I don't want to see them back. Alright, so for number 19, I'm gonna go back to BBCAN. So as I mentioned before, BBCAN is far more superior to BBUS. But for this opinion, I would say the last 3 BBCAN seasons, which means BBCAN 6, BBCAN 7, and BBCAN 8, have all been horrible. Like, I'm not sure what happened after BBCAN 5. I think what happened was after we had to sign that petition to keep them on the air, maybe they switched up the producers or the casting directors or something. I know something switched up because the formula is not the same. They don't cast the same type of people. Even in season 6, we didn't even have like a black queen that, I mean, she'd probably be a pre-jury flop, but still, it doesn't matter. We'd still root for her anyways. And we didn't have that on BBCAN 6, and I was like upset about that. And then BBCAN 7, we had Kaylin, which was like she seems like a sweet lady, but come on, she had no chance. And then season 8, we had Angie, which same thing as Caitlyn. She, like, when you cast older women, they don't have a chance of winning the game. And then when you add on the fact that they're black, like, you might as well just cast a do not, like, they're just hopeless at that point. Like, I need BBCAN to go back to its original casting. Like, give us the Ikas, give us the Levitas, give us the Sherrys, give us the Casses. Stop giving us Angies and Kaylyns. I'm sorry, I'm like, that sounds rude, but it is what it is. I don't know what happened with the casting directors or the producers, why they decided to take a different route, but these last 3 BBCAN seasons have been horrible. And if season 9's horrible, then at this point it needs to be canceled. So yeah. Alright, so shifting gears on to number 20. This one was kind of hard because I actually like this person, but I'm gonna be talking about Nicole from Big Brother 21. Now, bear in mind, I didn't watch that season in full. I just, after the camp comeback or camp come black, I gave up, because at that point it was just like, I got BB15 flashbacks pretty much, so I gave up pre-jury phase. But yeah, I don't see why Nicole is so loved in BB21. Hear me out. Like, I understand she wasn't one of the bigots and races, so I understand that part of liking her, but I really think we have to get out of this habit of always liking the allies. Like, how come it wasn't Kemi that got that kind of love? Why did we give it to Nicole instead of Kemi? Like, we do this a lot with, like, black women that have been, like, abused on these shows. Like, even in season 15, instead of giving the America's Favorite House guest to Candace, which she rightfully deserved it, we gave it to Alyssa because Alyssa was the only one that stuck up for Candace. I feel like that was the same case in season 21 with Nicole and Kemi. Like, don't get me wrong, Nicole is a sweetheart, but I feel like what she did was the bare minimum. Like, she was a human being to Kemi. She didn't disrespect Kemi. She didn't talk about Kemi. She wasn't racist towards Kemi. That's great, but that's the bare minimum. Like, she shouldn't be rewarded for being the bare minimum. Like, I understand if everyone was just so trash that she was the best option by default, but like, if she was the best option by default, why didn't we just give it to Kemi instead? Like, why didn't we give it to the actual people that were facing the discrimination? Why did we give it to Nicole, the one that I guess stood up to the discrimination, supposedly, even though she's hanging out with Jack and Jackson all over her Instagram? And she also chastised Kemi for yelling at them. So I don't know. I'm not really, like, I don't hate Nicole, but I just feel like Big Brother community needs to get out of the habit of rewarding the allies and actually reward the people who were victimized. Alright, so for lucky number 21. So now this opinion is very debatable, but you know, I see this a lot where people ask, who's the best female Big Brother player of all time? And I hear all the different answers. Some people say Danielle Reyes, some people say Janelle, some people say Danielle Donato, some even say Rachel. I mean, those are all good players, don't get me wrong, but if you were to ask me that question, I would honestly say Maggie from season 6 is the best female Big Brother player of all time. Like, just go back and watch season 6. They were honestly the older version of level 6 in Big Brother 20. Like, they ran through the Sovereign 6 alliance, which is the Janelle and Howie and James alliance. Like, a lot of people don't like them now because, which is fair if you don't like them. They did have trash attitudes, but if we're gonna be honest, they were the most successful female alliance in Big Brother history. I think they're the only successful female alliance in Big Brother history. They really ran the house, and then even though the Sovereign 6 side, even though they won a lot of competitions, the Friendship Alliance still controlled their HOHs. Like, whenever Janelle won HOH, whoever Maggie wanted out would leave that week. Whenever Howie won HOH or James won HOH, whoever the Friendship want, they would leave that week. Like, the Friendship Alliance ran the house. And come to think of it, I don't know why we liked the Sovereign 6 better than the Friendship. Maybe there was something happened on the feeds. To be honest, I didn't have feeds back then. I just watched it on TV. And yeah, at the time I rooted for Sovereign 6, but after rewatching it, the Friendship Alliance were way better, and Maggie was clearly the leader of the Friendship Alliance. Like, she was basically an older version of Derek, I would say, honestly, because she was actually only on the block, I think, one time before getting to the final 2. And it's really sad that her win is overshadowed because Janelle lost that season, but honestly, Janelle deserved to lose that season. Janelle was all comps, she had 0 strategy. Maggie was both comps and strategy, and Maggie was actually controlling people and running shit in the house. So yeah, Maggie is the best Big Brother female player, and I will die on that hill. Alright guys, we have finally reached number 22. And for this one, I'm going to be going all the way to the beginning of Big Brother, which is, well, Big Brother 2 for me. Well, I don't acknowledge Big Brother 1 because it was just a completely different game back then. I mean, America voted everyone out. There was no such thing as a HOH. Yeah, so Big Brother really started at season 2. So my most unpopular opinion, this is the one that gets me in arguments a lot. I think Nicole should have beat Dr. Will in season 2. Now hear me out. Dr. Will is an amazing player. Nobody can take that away from him. Like, I liked his game style a lot. I liked his style of play. I think it was really interesting the way he was able to get to the final 2 without winning any competitions and with being on the back burner for so long. And that's really great. But Nicole's game was just as good, if not better than Dr. Will, because she was also on the bottom of the house. She was at the bottom of the Chilltown Alliance, and she won all the comps. Like, she won I can't remember exactly how many comps that she won, but honestly, like, if they played Big Brother 2 again, when people would watch it, people would think that Nicole was robbed and Dr. Will was the guy that just skated his way to the final 2. Now, one thing I will say is I think Dr. Will had a much better speech than Nicole, but I think Nicole, honestly, I think Nicole was unfortunate to be sitting with a bitter jury. Like, the questions the jury was asking her were ridiculous. I mean, they were asking her about her religion. I think one time they asked her about her sexuality. It was just completely inappropriate questions, and which again goes back to misogyny. Like, I can't watch back the earlier seasons because of all of the misogyny and all the amazing women players that were robbed, from Allison to Nicole to who else, Danielle Reyes in season 3. Like, the earlier seasons, they're great game wise, but there was just a lot of sexism, and I'm glad that we as a community have grown past that, because these house guests would be getting dragged today for some of the comments that they made. But regardless, I don't think Dr. Will's a bad player, but I would have rather seen Nicole win, just because hers is a more classic game of Big Brother. She just played it at the wrong time. Like, she won comps when she needed to, she laid low when she needed to, and she made social connections when she needed to. Like, she was a solid player. Like, I think her or Dr. Will would have been great players, but I honestly think that she was low-key robbed just because of the way that the jury treated her. Yeah, I'm gonna say it with my chest. Nicole was robbed in season 2. But could you imagine, like, how the entire game would have changed if Nicole had won and not Dr. Will? I don't know. I think it'd be kind of funny to see how Big Brother would have turned out if Nicole won the game instead of Dr. Will. But yeah, I think that's what should have happened, but that's just my opinion. Alright guys, that was it. That was my 22 most unpopular opinions about Big Brother. So if you made it this far, please like the video, subscribe to my channel, or leave a comment down to see if you disagree with some of my opinions, if you agree with some of my opinions, and also let me know what are your most unpopular opinions about the show Big Brother. So without further ado, I'm not going to keep you guys any longer. This video is already too long, and also the feeds are about to start in like 30 minutes. So yeah, I'm going to talk to you guys later. See you guys later. Have a good night.